Hi! We are here. It turns out that we were both working on more or less the same thing today. I'm Charlotte from Charlotte So Natural. You can find us at sonatural.com on the web. And this is Kirsten. And she is here in the store most days, but today is her day that she stays home and works on stuff in her workroom. And you can also find her on our Facebook page and on these YouTube videos like you're gonna watch today. Well, so it turned out we were both working on binding. So I thought, let's just do a quick little video and show you some binding. So Kirsten, tell me what you've been doing.
Well, I'm working on this Halloween tablecloth. It's glow in the dark, but I'm just doing a basic binding, but I always do machine binding. I don't prefer hand. So I always stitch it onto the back after I've made my binding, and then fold forward, and I will stitch right along the very edge of that to have a nice clean, it's not even a measurable, like you have a nail, there you go, right along the edge.
Because that is a folded edge. This is like she has taken the fabric that she cut, she has folded it in half, so this is a folded edge. There are 2 layers, and this can be done either with a straight grain bias or with a bias cut bias.
Straight binding or bias,
binding.
yeah.
So this is going to wrap around. She's working on miter in the corner here, and that is going to be really nice. So you're doing it with a straight stitch. Is that what you said? You're going to stitch that down with a straight stitch?
Yeah, I'm just going to put some black thread on there, and I'm going to do a
thread.
straight stitch right on that very edge.
So you could also do a zigzag, which might be easier for a beginner. So that is a very basic, easy to do binding. On the other hand, I always try to make it look like I have hand sewed it even when I haven't, because hand sewing is my preferred way of binding. It's not because it's better, it's just because that's how I came to sewing, is trying to make everything look invisible, which is like totally the opposite of what we're trying to do a lot of times today. But I wanted to show you this. So I just finished this quilt. So this is the border. This is the right side. I can't show you very much of this. We're going to show you this another time. So this is the border, the cute little vintage print. I didn't really want too much of an accent on the outside, so I decided to bind it with the same thing. But this is called a flange, this little bit of contrast red here. And you can see I've mitered my corner and everything. And I really like that because I don't have to sew it by hand. I now stitched in the ditch to keep this down. Here's the trick. I have a whole video on how to do this, but here's the trick. The way with what I put on the back, I did not want that little vintage print on the back. I wanted the red. So here's what I did. This is a really fun split binding applied by machine to the back with a different binding on the front and a little flange. So the way I did this, let me tell you just real quick, I did 3 different pieces of fabric. So I have, this is 1 3/4, and you know, you have to try this for yourself. You have to look at and do a test to see what size you need to wrap around whatever the thickness of your fabric was, what kind of batting you have in here. But this is this little edge, this big piece, the largest piece is the little edge, and you don't see anything else of it. Then this is cut 1 inch, and that is there. And then this is the red, that is what is on the back. So I sewed this to this with 1/4 inch seam allowance, just normal. Then I'm going to sew this to this with not the normal scant 1/4 inch that I sew everything else with. I'm going to sew it with like a real 1/4 inch, like a real 1/4 inch. And so that's going to look like that. So here is my real 1/4 inch. This is sewed with my scant 1/4 inch. I press open the scant 1/4 inch seam. I press towards the binding the real 1/4 inch seam, and then I fold the entire thing in half, matching those edges, and I get the little flange that I'm looking for. So now I'm going to sew that to the back of my quilt with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. By the time I wrap that around, this is what I get. And that pressed open seam is right on the edge of my quilt. And it wants to fold there, and it does fold there. So it comes out just pretty perfect. It's 2 layers of fabric. It's coming around, it's wrapping around. This is extending just beyond that seam. So now I took 2 spools of thread. This is the red cotton metler that matches my fabric, and that goes on the top of the sewing machine. Then I used this Aurifil, which is a very fine, this is, I believe it's 80. Is that 80? 80. This is 80 weight Aurifil, and I put that in the bobbin. So I have the 80 weight Aurifil cotton thread in the bobbin. I have the red metler in the top, and I'm doing this because of color and because of weight and color. And then when I stitch in the ditch here, let's see if we can even find it for you. You can barely see it. There it is. I'm stitching pretty much in the ditch. On the back side, that comes really, really close and doesn't fall on the red. It's falling on the backing. So it doesn't show, which makes me happy. And I like to be happy.
Me too.
So I am done with my quilt. It's a big quilt. I spent about an hour doing that machine sewing, doing the final machine sewing today. It'll probably take you about 30 minutes to
finish it.
Yeah, because you have to wrap it and you have to be precise. And it's still, either one is good. Just we wanted to show you about this one because I had never done that before. I will do it again. It's great. So anyway, I'm Charlotte. I'm Charlotte So Natural, sonatural.com on the web, and Kirsten. You'll find her on Facebook and here in the shop. And thanks for joining us. Bye.